Hey guys, this is today I have Leah.
This is Jimmy.
Okay.
Come
Hey
on,
guys, I'm signing in.
And I am Leah, and I'm joining Jimmy today for this very fun video where we will be synthesizing some of the conversations we've had and drawing parallels between Jimmy's personal philosophy system that he's created and aspects of psychology, because I have a little credibility in the field considering that I have a bachelor's in psychology from an accredited Adventist institution, and I am a little over halfway through my master's program. So
Master's in
license
family.
Coming soon. No, master's in clinical mental health counseling. Okay.
Yeah, so I have my bachelor's in philosophy and master's in divinity. So my degrees are all religion-based. They're religion-based and they are philosophy-based. So because of that, a lot of times I feel insecure of the stuff that I come up with, of the stuff that I think about, because I studied philosophy, but I hadn't studied psychology. So, I question myself and I say, who am I to say that these are the stuff that I'm coming up with about how we think and how we understand the world and how we perceive the world? Who am I to say that these are solid perspectives, solid concepts to take into account when I haven't even studied psychology? So here, I have a friend that has actually taken significant amounts of psychology courses.
Courses, yes, and it's coursing through my veins.
Yes, she specializes in that, and she's trained in psychology, master's in family life.
No, not family life, clinical mental health counseling.
Clinical mental health counseling. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be talking about some of my main concepts, some of my main elements in the philosophical system that I came up with, and different mental maneuvers that I use and that I work with. And she's going to draw parallels with what she knows about the psychology content that she has studied and encountered.
It's all in here. It's all in here, folks.
Given that she has some background in actually studying psychology and clinical
mental health counseling.
Clinical mental health counseling.
Clinical family, yes.
It's a family. I don't know why I keep saying family. What's families?
I said it because I'm in the Department of Family Health Sciences.
Oh, okay, family health. Yeah, that's
He's a little right, but not really.
Okay. We're going to start off with Warworld and then Walls connects to it. So, Warworld is basically a state of mind, right? Because in this state of mind, the world looks like it's at war, and so that's why I call it Warworld, right? Basic.
There's a space. It's a space of conflict. Yeah. So yeah, it's a concept. It's a metaphor.
When I thought of this, it was because I kind of you encounter like situations in life where somebody says something, whether they're talking behind your back or whether they say something to your face, and you feel the need to lash back and feel the need to respond to their attack in some sort of way. In general, the most appropriate response in those situations would just be to you don't want to fight back, you don't want to stoke the fire. So basically what people tell you to do, what conventional wisdom tells you to do is to, de-escalate, to control yourself, not let yourself get all riled up and attack,
So I will say, this sounds to me like defensiveness, and the holding back is emotional regulation.
So yeah, emotional regulation, right? So, but when you're in that situation, just having that idea in your mind, just having that conviction of oh, I shouldn't respond, that's not enough, because your mind comes up, it kind of justifies the reasons why you should, especially when you're under that emotion of you just got attacked and you're feeling these negative emotions towards the other person. Your mind will justify and will come up with ideas of why you should lash back, right? And one of the things that happens, one of the things that goes on in your head when you're undergoing this emotion is that you start to think, I have to defend myself, because if I don't, other people watching will believe what they are saying about me. And I have to defend myself. And I have to make them look bad. I have to make them look stupid so that the witnesses don't actually think like I'm stupid. And so they'll think that they're stupid and that their words are not true. So that's the way it works out, right? And in your head, that makes sense, because when you defend yourself, then you're no longer getting attacked.
Because then you switch from defense to offense.
Yeah.
Because you're the attacker.
Yeah. So that's the reason why you fight back. So the picture is this, and this is why I call it war world. In that mentality where you feel like you need to defend yourself, they have a sword and they're attacking you, right? And for you to defend yourself, you need to pick up the sword and fight back, right? If you don't fight back, then they'll attack you and you'll end up getting injured. And that's not good. You don't want that to happen, right? So you have to have that sword. So the point is to be able to get out of war world, to be able to get out of the mentality. But to be able to get out of it, you need to drop your weapon. And that's difficult to do because when you drop your weapon, you're basically vulnerable. You're basically open to somebody attacking you.
It takes vulnerability to elevate, to grow.
So the thing about war world is that, you know, it comes from a place of paranoia, right? Because you're afraid of the other person. Because, like, really, if you think about it and you think about, like, the power that the other person has, yes, sometimes it's reasonable to be concerned about what they might say about you, you know, like, if you're in a political position, or, you know, like, sometimes celebrities get a lot of flack of their personal life when, you know, it's nobody's business. But just because somebody starts a rumor about them, now they have to deal with the consequences of those rumors. So yes, sometimes it is reasonable to respond to verbal attacks like that. But a lot of the times, you just have to kind of acknowledge the actual power that they have. Because if they're talking bad about you, if they're the type of person that gossips a lot, then they are most likely known as a type of person that gossips. So that reduces their credibility in the first place, right? And if you're just aware of that, then you're not really worrying about what they say about you, right? But the thing is that a lot of the times, the best thing to do is not to attack the other person, but just to kind of acknowledge what's going on and just not take it personally. Just go on your way, you know, treat everything in a practical manner, where if it's not really affecting you, you have no business trying to take care of it or trying to fix it.
Which reminds me, I think when we were talking about this the first time, I mentioned the cognitive distortion, which is a CBT thing. For those of you who don't know what CBT is, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. One of the therapeutic approaches with the most empirical support. Anyway, of personalization, and how, like, when things happen, like, on the inverse of that, if you do take it personal, it increases anxiety, and it's not really conducive to connection. Well, I guess it depends on what your intention is with the relationship or dynamic, but yeah, personalization is when you take responsibility for something that is maybe not your fault. So for example, let me give an example. Like, if you're a cashier and I'm a customer, and I go and I take my things, and then you're super rude, you're super mean to me, and I leave and I'm like, oh man, what did I do? I must have done something that hurt his feelings, or I wonder what I did. When in reality, you just got a phone call 3 minutes before saying, I don't know, what did your phone call say?
It was my mom telling me that she found my sock that I was looking for.
Yeah, and so the cashier is embarrassed, and see, that experience has nothing to do with you as a customer. So then it's like, okay, yes, acknowledge what's happening, and consider the different factors that it could be. Yeah, that's all. You're not the center of the universe.
So yeah, it's kind of like you want to acknowledge the other aspects and not take it personally, right? And the metaphor that I came up with is like, imagine you're playing a game. Imagine you're playing a game of chess, and you know, you're playing against your opponent, and there's a limited amount of ways that you can move your pieces, right? So when you're in war world, you attack, but you're always playing that game where you are, okay, I have to attack, and at the same time, I can't look stupid, you know, and I have to say this, but I can't say it this way, and I have to say it this way so that it kind of like exposes them. And so you're thinking of all these ways that you want the situation to be, right? But you see, those limitations only exist if you are playing the game. You can only move the pieces in a limited way because you are playing chess. But if you are not playing chess, then it doesn't really matter, you know, like there's no stakes in the game because you're not even playing the game, right? If you're not playing chess, you could just flip the game board over and it, you know.
Flip the table.
Yeah, flip the table. You are free to act in ways that are beyond the rules of the game, right? And so that's the advantage of like getting out of War World. But at the same time, when you're not in War World, because you're no longer fighting, you put your sword down, and that leaves you defenseless within the construct of the game, right? But if you're not playing the game, it doesn't matter if you're defenseless or not, because you're not even playing along with them. You're not partaking in their little game that they're trying to play with you.
And so the objective of War World is to not be in War World, right? Okay.
Yeah. To not buy into the game according to their rules, because, you know, they're imposing that mentality on you. And for you to react in that way, it just means that you're playing their game. Yeah.
You can talk about walls?
Yeah, so walls. Walls is a different concept. How did I come up with this? I noticed that people were, I thought about this because, you know, sometimes you'll have the experience of where you're trying to ask for help, you're lost and you're asking for directions, or you just want somebody, and a lot of people have social anxiety. They don't want to ask for help because sometimes their experience is that when they try to ask for help, especially to strangers or somebody that they don't know, somebody that, you know, off on the side of the street, they don't want to come off as weird, because what do people do with weird people? They ignore them. They pretend they don't exist,
they
right?
They ostracize them.
They avoid, you know, it's like, imagine like a homeless person asking for change. The common response to that is to just ignore them. Don't make eye contact with them, because if you make eye contact with them, then you're acknowledging them, then you have to deal with them. And you don't want to deal with them, so you just pretend they don't exist, right? And so I was seeing this a lot, and I was kind of paying attention to this phenomena. And this also goes into that lady, was it in New York?
I think so, yeah.
That it was during the daytime. She got stabbed to death, and she was yelling for help, and nobody came to her aid. Why? Because, you know, like, people saw that it was a bad situation, a situation that they didn't want to involve themselves in, and so they just turned the blind eye. Is that how you say?
They turned a blind eye.
Yeah,
to her assault, to her murder. Yeah.
And, you know, they just pretended it didn't exist, right? So this is the phenomena that I call walls, and it's the walls that people have to protect themselves from having to deal with other people. And this is not necessarily bad. And so I was analyzing this, and I was asking myself, why do people have these walls? You know, what is so hard about, you know, like them acknowledging somebody else? What is so hard about when somebody says hi, just saying hi back? What is so hard about if somebody has a question, to listening to them and asking the question? This also happens a lot, like when you're trying to, like if you've ever had the experience of being a salesman, you know, and you're trying to get people's attention and people just ignore you because they don't want to deal with you, right? And what I discovered is that, yes, it does take effort and it does take work to acknowledge people. It does take effort to acknowledge people. Why? Why does it take so much work? Because it's not just about the hi, it's not just about the hello, it's not just about the listening to your question and giving you directions. No. It's about everything that's implied behind the other person, behind what another person is. Another person is not just a face and a question. It's a whole personality. And you wonder, like when you see somebody in the street and they're trying to interact with you, you wonder what their personality is. You wonder how many issues this person has and what sort of stuff you'll have to deal with. And to try and figure that out, whether it's a lot or not, to try and figure that out takes a lot of work. And so what do people do? They just put up their walls and they just decide not to deal with you. And what it turns out being, when you make eye contact with somebody, it's more difficult to deny their humanity. So that's why people try not to make eye contact with you, because once you make eye contact, now they have to acknowledge that you're a person, that you're a human being, and it's more difficult for you to hurt somebody when you're making eye contact with them. It's more easier to hurt somebody if you don't acknowledge them as human being, if you just ignore them. If you're not making eye contact with them, it's easier to hurt them, it's easier to not care about them, and you can just go on your way and not worry about what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's dehumanizing to not acknowledge someone,
yeah.
Right? Which reminds me of a concept by Martin Buber. Buber, I think we talked about it, I-it versus I-thou. So basically, I-it is when people, or is the tendency for people to view others in a two-dimensional, very simplistic way, in a very objectifying way. For example, they don't view someone who's unhoused as a human being with experiences and emotions and family members. They just see them as a nuisance. Or they see their pastor as someone who should be upright and holy, and then when they find out, oh, pastor used to drink, they'll be like, what? The pastor? What? It's like you only see them at face value. You're not considering and taking into account their humanity, the context, and the different dimensions of their existence. Versus the I-thou is navigating the world, giving people that value, that inherent human value, acknowledging their humanity and giving them respect and, what's the word? Dignity, etc., etc.
What I just got from what you just said, is that we have this idea of what being objectified is, and when you're objectifying somebody, and what it feels like to be objectified, right? And basically, what I heard from you is that those times in which somebody's trying to talk to us and we don't make eye contact with them, we're basically objectifying them, right?
Yeah.
And what that reminded me of is like when you're gossiping, or when you're talking about some other person,
mm-hmm.
and you're talking not to them about their issues, but you're talking about them, about
mm-hmm.
their issues, where you don't have to acknowledge them,
mm-hmm.
and you don't have to get to know their actual situation or their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
You're just talking about them, how
Yeah.
they gossip, how we
Mm-hmm.
treat celebrities and political figures, where we just say whatever we want.
Yeah.
And we don't even give them a chance to justify themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or to explain themselves or the situation. We are objectifying them. So we objectify celebrities.
We objectify police officers. We objectify a lot. It's like a very common thing to do.
And we objectify people that, like even our friends, like whenever you gossip about people that you know or that you have know, or even your friends, you're kind of objectifying them because you're not giving them a chance to show their humanity or to see how complex their situation is.
You're dishonoring them. Yeah. No, but seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gravitation toward pain. Gravitation toward pain is a concept. Let me give you this picture. Right. When your hypothetical daughter, she gets out of school at 2:30 p.m. and she gets home maybe 3 o'clock, 30-minute walk, or, just to get out of class and do all of her stuff and get home. But imagine that instead of coming home at 3 o'clock like she usually does, It's 3:15 and she's not home. And it's 3:30 and she's not home. And she doesn't have a phone, so it's not like you can call her or text her. And your mind starts coming up, you start worrying, and your mind starts coming up with possibilities of like what could have happened, you know? And even though it's only been 30 minutes, you worry a lot, and you start wondering like, did she get kidnapped? You know, like, you know, if she's with her friends, that's fine, but what if something bad happened? Maybe she got hit by a car, maybe she got kidnapped, and right now she's getting driven to Mexico.
Come on,
yeah,
guys.
This is getting too morbid for this
Okay.
video.
Okay, yeah, so
Okay.
the child's been kidnapped, you assume the worst, and
Yeah.
your mind starts gravitating towards these anxious
Yeah,
thoughts.
and that's basically what happens where, you know, because your general knowledge of the world is the ground, right? But when something goes wrong, it's kind of like the ground that you're standing on gets pulled from under you. And right now, because you no longer have the ground, you just plummet to the worst possible scenario that you can think of. And so the question is, why does your mind do this? And your mind does this because it wants to prepare for the worst. It wants to be, if something bad did actually happen, it wants you to think about it, to kind of prepare and to start thinking about the solutions that you can come up with, right? So that's gravitation toward pain. It's basically when there's something that's unknown, you gravitate towards the worst possible scenario. Your mind gravitates towards the worst possible scenario. And, you know, this happens like when you meet somebody, right? When you meet somebody, there's a lot of things about them that you don't know, right? And if you're not getting any sign from them that they are sane or that they are likable or safe, then, you know, they don't have to say anything, but they could just stare at you, right? And just because they're not interacting in what to you feels like a normal person, you start thinking the worst. They start giving you bad vibes, you know, and your mind just starts coming up with, this guy is a serial killer. This guy is a psycho.
He's gonna shoot this place up.
This, you know, if I walk into a place, you know, and maybe I was just stressed out at work, maybe I'm pissed off at somebody, or maybe I'm just having a bad day and I'm looking for my friend in this restaurant. So I walk into the restaurant looking like this, right? And because you don't know what's been going on in my personal life, you're gonna start, oh, this guy's pretty assertive. He looks angry. He's gonna shoot this place up.
I would think that.
Right? And so you start getting creeped out. Or like if he has a backpack and he accidentally leaves the backpack.
It's a bomb. Don't do that at the airport.
Yeah, because you don't know what's in that bag. Your mind starts coming up, you know, gravitating toward pain. Your mind starts coming up with like the worst possible thing that could happen in that situation, which maybe the bag has a bomb in it, right? And you start feeling anxious and stuff like that. Yeah. Does that correlate with anything?
Fortune telling is another cognitive distortion, which the only reason I'm mentioning CBT, I don't even like CBT that much, is because it's in my head because of an internship I did. Anyway, fortune telling is basically where, like you said, something minor happens, like your child being, which is totally subjective, that could be a crisis, but something small happens and you start assuming, or like formulating these very elaborate, scary, anxiety evoking scenarios in your head with no evidence. I mean, what is the evidence that you have to go off of? I mean, it's based in fear, you know, and a healthy amount of fear is good. I would say good and healthy. I mean, it keeps us safe. But I think the line there is when it's a chronic pattern and it impacts the way that you function. Like if it's completely debilitating, that's a little concerning. And so what is the flip side to gravitation toward pain? Do you think that people are just doomed to gravitate toward pain always, or is there a time or a level or space they can enter where they can be better adjusted and not jump to the worst conclusion? What could someone practice? What could someone do? That's a really long question. Anyway.
No, yeah, I think gravitation toward pain is a good and natural thing. It's a natural thing because, you know, it protects us. You know, when you're afraid of something, you start to prepare for it, right? It's more about how you respond to this. Like when you're afraid, when your mind starts coming up with these crazy and ugly scenarios, how do you respond to them? If you're actually using that information that makes you anxious, if you're actually using that information to plan things out and to sort things, okay, well, if my daughter is kidnapped, like how much money do we have? Like how are we going to respond to that? Like how are we going to look for her? Are we going to get the cops involved? What if they tell us to not get the cops involved? Like what are we going to do with that? Do they want our money? Like why did she get kidnapped? Like how long has it been since she hasn't been around? And then once you take care of all of that, then you kind of like say, okay, this is what we would do. This is how we would respond to the situation if the worst has happened. Now that I have this, now that I've prepared for this scenario, what are more realistic possibilities? Okay, maybe she's at her friend's house. How can we find her? Like what friends do I have phone numbers for? Maybe I could call the school and ask her where she went. Maybe if there's somebody that we know so then you prepare for that. And then once you prepare for that, so you know, it's kind of like there are situations in life that we never think about because we think that they'll never happen to us, and because they'll never happen to us, we don't have to think about, we'll never have to deal with it. But when we gravitate toward pain, that's kind of like waking us up and it's telling us, hey, wake up, this is real life. You think this is never going to happen to you, but guess what? Right now, it seems like it's happening. And that's, even if it's not happening, your mind is kind of giving you that opportunity for you to think about that scenario and say, okay, what would you do in this situation? How would you respond to it?
Wait, before you move on, I want to say something. Anticipating the worst thing and then figuring out how you would navigate it is actually an intervention for Gestalt or in Gestalt therapy, which is my theoretical orientation. And this intervention is called future projections, where you usually do this with people who struggle with anxiety or they have a lot of fear about a conversation, an event, or whatever, and you ask them what's the worst possible thing that could happen. And you walk through it, you say, okay, how would you respond? What are the steps you would take? And they think about what they would do. And the whole point of this is to demonstrate that you have the competence and the tools to navigate even the worst case scenario. Maybe you'll still feel anxious about it, but now you have the knowledge that if it does happen, that you know, or you have the tools to know what to do. Anyhow, that little tidbit.
Gravitation toward pain is, it feels bad, right? Because it makes you anxious, but it's not necessarily a bad thing because it's giving you an opportunity to think about these situations and to sort them out before they happen. Now, it's not really about, you know, like never getting into this situation and never having these scenarios play out in your brain, but it's more like when they do, how do you respond to them? And the way that you respond to them is to learn from them and to overcome them.
I mean, a lot of times that's the only thing we can control, our responses and our emotional responses and our physical responses.
The other concept that that we're going to over is an element that I like to call mirror world. And basically it's, I use this a lot just naturally, and I discovered, or I put a name to what I was doing because I knew that because I saw that I was doing this a lot. And I did this when I was in certain situations, social situations, when I would interact with people. And some of their responses, the way they behaved towards me or the way they responded to what I was doing, I really didn't like. Like it triggered me, or I thought they were like trying to be mean, or, you know, they responded in a way that that just made me uncomfortable, right? And I would wonder, like, why are they doing that? Why are they like that? Why do they have to be so cruel, or or attack me in that sort of way, or why do they have to be distant? And so I would go back home and I would replay that same scenario, and those questions that I had in my mind, like, why are they like that? Why are they like that? Why are they like that? I would try to answer them, right? And I would replay the same scenario. I would put myself in that situation. And what I would do is that I would take my POV, my point of view, and put it on their side and ask myself, I'm behaving in this way and they are behaving in this way. When in my life have the roles been switched, where they are behaving in this way, where the other person is behaving in this way, and I'm behaving in this way? Let's say that I did something wrong and the other person's yelling at me, right? And I don't need them to yell at me because I knew that I did something wrong, but they're still accusing me and telling me that I did something bad, right? And so I would replay that situation and I try to think, okay, in what situation have I seen somebody do something wrong and they look all mopey and stuff, but I still feel the need to emphasize that and to tell them, you did this wrong, you better correct yourself and stuff like that. So basically, you're looking in that situation, you're looking at the other person, and this is why it's called mirror world, because it's kind of like looking into a mirror, right? Where you see yourself acting the way that they're acting, right? And you're kind of like taking their role and trying to make sense of the situation that you're in.
That literally demonstrates what I was talking about earlier, the I-thou relationship, because by doing that, you're humanizing them and you're empathizing with them, you're taking some of that power or responsibility that we have and you're taking it back, because the flip of that would be just to get angry with them and say, oh, you're being mean to me, you're bad, you're a bad person. First of all, you're objectifying them based on that one situation. I mean, if it's a pattern, then maybe you should address it. But yeah, I mean, you're taking back some of that power and the responsibility that you have to manage your own emotional experience.
Yeah, and you said the word you use is empathizing.
Empathy.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
About empathy. So there's a continuum of how we relate to people, right? There's sympathy, empathy, and compassion. Or maybe it's sympathy, compassion, empathy. Anyway, they're all on a continuum, right? Sympathy is the lowest form of relation we could think of. So it's like if you hurt your finger or you cut yourself, it's like, oh, I feel so bad for you. Okay, move on. Like, I'm sure we all have situations where we've shared something and you feel like people are pitying you. Pity is sympathy, you know? Empathy is, wow, it looks like you're in a lot of pain. Like, I'm here with you, So kind of connecting with their emotional experience. So like Jimmy was saying, thinking to a time where maybe I've never cut my arm, but I've experienced pain, so I can connect with that emotion, Compassion is a step further than empathy, where it's like, oh no, I see you're injured. What can I do to fix it? What can I do to help you? So I would go get a first aid kit and patch him up, of course. So yeah, empathy basically. Yeah.
And so would you say that practicing this mental maneuver, this mirror world mental maneuver, that it would help you empathize with other people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would say even the act of doing that is you practicing empathy.
And so, I mean, I guess the more you do it, the better you get at empathizing.
It's like
with
a
others.
muscle. It's literally like a muscle. It's similar with mindfulness, being present, being grounded. We're not born knowing how to do these things. We have to condition ourselves and train ourselves to do them. But we become healthier by doing them. And we connect more authentically with people when we do.
The next concept, I'm not sure if you have anything to say about it,
Okay,
but
I'll listen.
Let me know if it connects with anything that you've come across. I call it the Cave of Wonders and the Curse of Wonders. In the Cave of Wonders, I get it directly from the story of Aladdin, where like he walks in, and basically there's all these jewels, there's all these temptations. Like Aladdin's after the lamp, and he goes into the cave to get the lamp, but there's all these all these riches that are on the side that kind of tempts him from the goal. And we saw that in Pan's Labyrinth yesterday too,
with
right?
the food and stuff. Yeah.
And so there's all these distractions, and basically it's like there's one thing that you're after, but there's all these wonderful things that are trying to take your mind from what you really want at the end, right?
Deviating the focus.
Yeah, deviating the focus. And the curse of wonders is what happens when you see something good and it ruins your life because of it. I think this happens a lot, especially when somebody takes ecstasy, right? And ecstasy makes you feel so good that when you come off of it, normal life doesn't seem that good anymore, and you're just not happy, and you're just not you can't enjoy it, right? So that's the curse of wonders, right? Where by hearing something good, by experiencing something good, by seeing something good, by seeing how your life could be if you just had this thing, you are no longer satisfied with the path that your life is currently taking.
Or the present moment.
Yeah. Or I think this also happened a lot, like when people watched Avatar, the movie Avatar, and it was like post-Avatar blues, where because they saw that movie and they saw this like beautiful world that could be true, and like after they watched that movie, they looked at their own lives and they were like, oh, you know, I wish my life was like that. And they looked at their own lives and they weren't satisfied with the life that they were living. So that is the curse of wonders, where you see something good and it makes you feel bad. It makes you dissatisfied with the present moment.
That reminds me of a lot of common issues that people experience when they're chronically online. I'm part of that. But sometimes when people consume so much media, so much Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Netflix, whatever, you name it, you start to like envy almost, you know, and like long for the ideal that these things are portraying, which oftentimes is not really realistic. Like, babe, those are filters. What are you talking? That video was edited. It's not showing real life, but we become detached from our own experiences and focus on something that's not real, you know, and that takes us away from experiencing our lives in the current moment, which is really all we have. This is all we have right now. This is all that's real.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
These are just a few concepts, a few mental maneuvers that I've come across in my own journey, trying to figure out what is the appropriate way to live life and to navigate life. And these are just a few of the concepts and a few of the mental maneuvers that I've come up with. And so
based on your experiences.
Yeah, based on my personal experiences. And it's you know, I'm really glad that I was able to talk about these with Leah, and to have her and to use her educational background to kind of like give some sort of basis, give some sort of foundation to the stuff that I come up with. To validate
some of the ideas and things. Like, there are parallels everywhere, people, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Parallels everywhere.
Yeah, so
we're signing out?
Yeah, this has been a good conversation, a good reflection of the conversations that we'd have before. And right now we're just getting them on video.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Well, it's been such a pleasure. Until next time, folks, we're going to give a high five with my earrings, and then we will say sayonara. Okay? Ready? Here, grab this.
Oh, okay.
Ready?
1, 2.